Welcome to episode 9 of Pull No Punches. I am Josh.
And I'm Lauren.
And this episode, we are talking about marriage roles and just kind of going through what our roles are in marriage, what we saw as we were growing up, and kind of were the examples of what led us into our adulthood and how we kind of massage that and transform that. And it's an ever-flowing thing, even from the beginning of our marriage to probably now where we're at.
Yeah, in and out of marriage, both. And it's kind of an interesting topic for us because, as you guys know, we're pretty traditional when it comes to most things. But I think you'll find that where we've found there's been times where our situation is super traditional, and there's been times where it's absolutely not traditional at all.
For sure.
From what we would call traditional. I mean, they've definitely changed throughout our marriage. And they've kind of flip-flopped too, both ways, both, career-wise and, in and out of the household.
Absolutely.
From, simple things like chores, which, become a little bit more complicated as you get married and who's doing what, but also to, the bigger picture, like who's the breadwinner, who's bringing in the money, all of those roles and having to cope and deal with those transitions and, mentally when it's not traditional, how we feel in those situations when, we're, in a spot where we're not used to it, or it wasn't something we grew up with.
Right.
So first question for you,
Oh boy.
is, talking about those roles, when you grew up, what were your parents' roles in and out of the household?
That would be very, very, in a sense, traditional.
Yeah.
My dad was the breadwinner. My mom, when I was very little, actually worked at a preschool and ran the preschool. That is her love language,
Yes.
and she's very good with kids.
Very good.
But as soon as my dad started making a lot more money, and we were very fortunate to have a very great income and blessed childhood, but he was the breadwinner, and my mom then stayed home. And for the longest time, my mom has always been a stay-at-home mom, which I've loved, and we've had a great relationship from that. But then on the flip side of that, my mom has been a stay-at-home mom. So as soon as my dad got home, it was, I'm going to turn the TV on and I'm going to do what I want to do, and I'm not going to do this. And my mom cooked, cleaned, laundry, made the bed, took care of the kids, wiped the kids' butts, kind of did everything in the sense that you would say that a 1960s mother would do.
Yeah. And that's when we say traditional, that's what you mean.
Exactly.
The husband's the breadwinner. The, wife stays home, takes care of the kids, takes care of the house, takes care of the cooking, takes care of the cleaning. So when we talk about traditional, that's kind of what we mean.
Exactly. Yep. And that's just kind of, it's put a lot of good things in my head of what I saw, but it's also as a man, when I see like, how can I help my wife, and can I, I did this today, but can I do this a little bit better tomorrow, or and vice versa. Sometimes it's bad because, I start leaning back on those traditional ways and values that I saw growing up.
That's how you learn. That's what you learned.
Exactly. So I guess let me bounce that back off to you. What did you see when you were growing up? I know it's different dichotomy because my parents were married this whole time. We haven't really dug into that, but you had a split household. Yeah. Parents divorced a little bit. So it's going to be a different roles depending on whose house you're at. But
so when my parents were married, when we grew up, it was very different. So my dad was a stay-at-home dad at the time when my parents were still married, and my mom bounced around in management at the Bon Marché, if anybody knows what that is still, which is and now Macy's. And so she was just fortunate to have that role, and we did move quite a bit. They did move quite a bit because of that, and so because she had that career, my dad stayed at home, and he did everything with us. So it was very, very different than what most people, especially when we were children, experienced. It was very different, very interesting. I mean, it worked at the time, and unfortunately, my parents did get divorced. Then a few years later, when I was in third grade, and then my mom did get remarried a couple years later, and those roles did kind of change a little bit. My stepdad's a little bit older than her, so they were lucky to kind of be starting to roll into that retired life. But they definitely, did kind of switch over a little bit, where my mom definitely took care of the household switched into that role now. And I think that comes along with, having an older spouse and, retirement and all of that great stuff that comes along. And so she did end up, cooking, cleaning for the most part. And so, yeah, I had, kind of a plethora of different circumstances that went along with my childhood and, good and bad. But there wasn't ever one specific thing that, I was or saw was, brought up into as far as a role of what a marriage or a, spouse or a wife and a husband were to do, or, really something that I would say that, this is how our household was. And this is what I felt was the right way or the wrong way. I didn't have a feel for that, and not saying what my parents did was right or wrong, but it was just kind of a mixture, a smorgasbord of different things within our household when I was young.
Yeah, definitely different.
Yeah. So, as with that too, I think that we've had, on a high level, we've had a little bit of that, just things changing and evolving. It's changed a lot for us from, when we were dating to engaged, as far as, we can just start with, our work, our income, who's the breadwinner.
Yeah.
And
it didn't start out
evolved
that way. The breadwinners switching roles back and forth. We both started working out of college right away. And then
I'd call that dual income kind of.
Yeah, dual income. And then we ended up buying a house and gotten engaged and got married and switched jobs a couple times. You switched jobs a couple times. And then we fortunately, came across an opportunity working in insurance and jumped on that, and you soon became the breadwinner very, very quickly.
Yeah.
And which was fortunate enough because it allowed me to quit my job where I was and come work full time on the insurance business. And then, the roles are now flip flopping again, where we were fortunate enough to have that side of the business. And we are now opening another business where I'm really the lead in that. But I could see, let's talk about our roles in the household a little bit.
Yeah.
We talk about our roles. There's two things that I really don't like to do. And one of that I really don't do at all is laundry. I don't do laundry. I do not do laundry. I loathe laundry. I will do it if you ask me pretty please. I will do it. But I just don't like to do it. I'll do everything else. I'll clean on my hands and knees with a toothbrush in the bathroom, or detail the cars, or do whatever you want. I just
you
don't
do a
want to do
lot.
laundry.
We're going to kind of poke fun at each other, but you do a lot. But it did come to mind, I think it was the other day. Have you ever done the kids' laundry before?
No, I have not. I should probably.
Our son is almost 3. I was just thinking, I just do it. Like, we have obviously established a lot of roles that, work for us.
Right.
And there's just some things that we're willing to take over that the other person is just not, ingrained. It's not ingrained in their head to do. And I think, we will get into a little bit of what we think is super bizarre that people won't do. Because I think we come across couples or marriages, we hear like, oh, I won't do that. My spouse does that every time. And it's like, that's like the most simple thing ever.
What is that?
Well, remember the other day we were talking to a couple and, I guess we'll get into it now. What did she say? She's like, I just don't take out the trash. And I was like, what if it's full? Like, there's things like laundry is a big deal. Like, there's laundry. What else is big? Like, vacuuming the floor, cleaning the bathrooms, mowing the lawn, doing all of that stuff. And I was expecting her to say one of those. And she just goes, I just don't take out the trash. And I was like,
interesting.
So if it's full, you just leave it. And that's just the husband's job. And that's fine. They've established that, you know, and it is funny. You do get to those things that we establish. And one of the biggest things for us is we've established that you take care of the outside stuff and I take care of the inside stuff.
Yeah. But I end up having help with the inside stuff because we live in there most of the time.
Yeah. And there's just more stuff to do.
The two things that we prominently have roles for, there's only two things. I will mow the lawn and take care of the outside stuff. And you do the laundry.
Yeah.
Everything else is a team effort.
Yeah.
And you might do one more than the other some days, and I might do one more than the other some days, but it all equals out because it helps the marriage.
Yeah. I will say when we talk about roles and when we really start thinking about it, there's not much for us that is separated.
Right.
Like you just said, like you do these 10 things and you do these 10 things, right?
Right.
We have those 2 specific things because, he enjoys doing the outside stuff. I'd rather not if he enjoys it, and he hates doing the laundry. Those are 2 things. Okay, we're going to do those separately. We're on the same page. And those are things we have to do consistently every week. And I think that that's super great that we have that because it's important. Those are 2 really big things. If the lawn doesn't get mowed and the yard's not taken care of, we get in trouble by our neighborhood. Or my husband is in a bad mood, which is like way worse than anything ever. And then same thing with laundry. If it doesn't get done, my husband's in a terrible mood. So I don't want that to happen.
I have no underwear at that point. And I have to just, walk
That's
around.
when it gets really bad. You have like 14 pairs of underwear. So that means I haven't done laundry for like 2
weeks. It's been a while.
Weeks.
Krusty's on it.
But yes. And, other things we've heard are like,
I won't take care of the kids. Not me personally, but I've heard of like fathers. Like I don't bathe them, change them, dress them.
Yeah. Or a father has changed like 2 diapers in his whole life.
Yeah. It blows my mind because I'm like, that's my kid.
Yeah.
I was trying to think of something that like hit home with me that was, I think a pastor was preaching on, and then we were talking about husbands love their wives and wives submit to their husbands.
Right.
And the preacher was talking about, obviously we all think of the word submission.
Mm-hmm.
But
some take it negatively.
Some take it in a sense that it's like, you must submit. Like I asked you to do the laundry, you do the laundry.
Right.
Or I asked you to go take the garbage out. So you take the garbage out. And in the sense where it's like flipped, it's like, if I loved my wife, I would assist them. I would help her. Mm-hmm. I would do the diapers when she is busy or she asked me to. And the submission is almost flipped because in loving you, I can submit to you. Mm-hmm. Not that I needed to submit to you, but biblically it's saying love your wife and the wives submit to your husbands. Yeah. And it kind of just comes around circle. And so that's what I think of. Like, so when people are sitting there like, no, I don't do that. Like, yeah, it works for you. That's great for you. But there's got to be at some point some animosity in a marriage when someone doesn't do something or doesn't want to help or doesn't, you know.
That gets misconstrued so often.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I mean, I don't know if it was the same video, but it was along the similar lines. I was watching maybe another video and the guy was saying, give your wife something to submit to. Like, as far as like looking up to you, not just saying you need to do this and you need to do this, but be a role model.
Right.
Right. And then, she'll follow suit because she's encouraged. She's not beaten down because she's, submitting because she's being asked to do all these things. She's encouraged because, she's following a man of God and he's respectful of her and what she's doing.
Right.
But at the same time, you're also putting in just as much effort, just in a different way.
Absolutely.
So, it's one of the, like I said, I think that gets misconstrued so often, and it's sad because it's just like, you can't take the high level view of what the word actually just means. You have to actually look at it from a biblical standpoint. But anyways, we're kind of getting off on a tangent. But yeah, even like putting the kids to bed or like you said, bathing them. It's just really interesting when you do hear people talk about those roles, and it kind of takes me aback sometimes, like that certain people don't do certain things. But again, as we talk about almost every week, we could be different. What other people do is not necessarily wrong, but yeah, I mean, but
there are a couple things like we don't argue about, like we don't really argue about roles ever. Right. Mm-hmm. We don't ever argue about money. No. Ever. Mm-hmm. Those are 2 big things I feel like bring animosity into marriages, and we've talked about it. So I'm not saying we're doing the right thing, but what we're doing is working
as a team
for us. Mm-hmm. And if that's something that can help somebody, then that's great. Yeah. If you're struggling with it, look at it. I don't know.
And we work as a team in everything. Yeah. We don't just work as a team in, our businesses, or, we work as a team with our children in our household. Whether you have children or not, I mean, there's still roles in a marriage. There's still roles in a household.
Right. And we don't want to pull the rope across from each other. We want to pull the rope together. Yeah. Because when 2 pull the rope together, it's a lot easier to move.
Yeah. And there's a lot of strands on that rope. Like I said, there are, I mean, when you think about all the stuff that has to be done, I mean, just looking around the house right now, there's still stuff that needs to be done every single day. I mean, animals, I mean, there are things that they pile up, and, it's encouraging to me to have a spouse that, especially a husband, a male, that is so willing to go above and beyond what a lot of, like I said, traditionalists would do. And like I said, we're traditional in a lot of senses, but I think this is one area where we found ourselves to be a lot, unfortunately, it's non-traditional, but I feel so thankful that I have a spouse that is willing to go out of his way, even after a hard day of work. And, we give each other grace on that too. I mean, you've had a hard day, you've had a hard day. If you can't, if you don't have the energy, for one night to like go run around with the kids, you don't have the energy.
Right.
But it's not going to happen every single night because you love your kids, you miss them, even though you're tired, right?
Right. No, yeah. No, I want to handle it. Like the best part of my day is taking our son to bed, laying him down, saying prayers, and then he just wants to talk and tell me about his day.
Yeah.
And it might not all be correct, but he's just talking. It's like the love and the heart that's coming out. And it's like so pure. And I don't know. I really
and he just enjoys being in there talking to you no matter what's coming out of his mouth.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know. But it's interesting to see like where it's evolved over time, like where we're at. And I think the traditional sense has kind of worked its way out of marriages. I mean, not all marriages, but I think back in the day, you'd have the bootleg jobs that were going and grinding and on your feet 24/7. So when you came home, that was the last thing you wanted to do because your wife was home.
You're mentally and
physically
exhausted.
Her job at that point was saying, hey, I'm going to take care of you. You're providing for our family. And as we've kind of ebbed and flowed throughout society and generations, inflation has gone up tenfold.
Yeah.
So now 2 incomes have to be provided.
Yeah.
2 people have to work.
Yeah.
And when 2 people have to work, they have to come back into our household and figure out like, how are we going to make this work? And you want to work it out for the kids. And you don't want to get divorced. So you just figure it out. Yeah. And as you're figuring it out, you're figuring out the roles of how stuff plays out. So I'm not saying like we need to do everything. And if you have a certain role that like works for you and that works for your marriage, that's great.
Yeah.
As long as you're doing it together as a team.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I'm doing this, this, and this, and you're doing this, this, and this, and that's your chore list every single week.
Yeah.
And that's what works.
That's great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
We just do it a little differently and work as a team.
Yeah. But there is a plan in place. It's not like we're just like, oh, we're just going to free for all everything.
I mean, you have a plan.
Yes, that is true. I mean,
I'm the optimist.
We're not going to sugarcoat everything.
I'm the optimist in planning.
No, you're the optimist, and everything's going to get done eventually.
Yeah. We did watch a funny video the other day.
Yeah. So again, it's not all sugar coated. There are some little hiccups in our teamwork there. But
do you remember that video I showed you? I don't. The premise of it was the guy walks in. He's like, honey, honey, honey. I didn't want to jinx it, but I had to show you this. I put my dirty clothes in this bin, and every morning when I wake up, they're magically clean and folded. And she's like, no, are you serious? He's like, I'm dead serious. He's like, well, I also didn't want to tell you this. When he goes over to the dining room table, he's like, this is a magic table. I put my beers and my pizzas and all that. And in the morning, poof, it's cleaned up, thrown away. I don't know where I went.
Oh my goodness. Yeah,
I thought it was funny.
It was funny. It was hilarious.
You didn't laugh too hard.
I mean, now it's funny. But no, I mean, it is one of those things where, we don't want to put on this facade that we are always on the same page all the time. There are days, weeks where it's just like, I need to get this done. And, oh yeah, I got it, typical thing. And it's like, oh, I want it done right now. And then he just, it gets done eventually, but I end up doing a lot more stuff that I shouldn't do because I am a little bit impatient.
Yes.
It's going to get done eventually. So that's where our roles, that's where I'm at fault for the most part because I'm impatient. But I want it done now, typically, because it's my time to get it done. And it's good timing for me where it may not be good timing for him. So that's where, with those roles, sometimes, I just need to sit back and trust that my spouse is going to get those things done that, we said we're going to get done. But
right. Well, before we close out, is there any other funny, weird antics that you've heard from people that say, I just don't do that?
Man, that garbage one really threw me for a loop. I'm like, what if what I'm like, anyways, I already said it's overflowing. Kids to bed. Obviously there's people that say, I won't clean the toilets. I'm trying to think. Spouses that like, they will not let each other load or unload the dishwasher because of the way they load or unload it. I feel like that's kind of like a thing. Haven't you seen those videos on Instagram?
Oh, okay. So I've seen the videos, but who have you heard that from?
No, somebody told me that once. They go, he's not allowed to load the dishwasher because of the way he loads it.
I tell that to you all the time, but I still let you load it.
I just want to get those dishes in there and get them done. Like I don't care if
three
they're
big
like perfectly
bowls flopped over with nothing else in there.
Just get it all in there, turn it on, run it, and then they're clean. And then I unload it anyways.
Oh, that's funny. Well, anyways,
right?
Okay, yeah, you do. Well, that we'll wrap that up here really quick. That's kind of how we manage our roles in our marriage and how we go about things in life. And
and it's different. It's okay to be different. We, it works for us. We've really enjoyed kind of molding what we've come into.
Right. So, next episode 10, we're going to dive into a little bit of minimalist living. And mainly when we say minimalist living, we're talking about budgeting. We're going to get into how we go about it, what we decide to spend money on, what we don't decide to spend money on. We've already kind of gone over budgeting in a sense.
I'd say it's more like what we buy and how we buy it.
Exactly.
Budgeting, being frugal, different things like that. And we'll get more into it. And it's probably going to be a lot of unpopular opinion type stuff. But it's going to be interesting.
Yeah. So we'll catch you next week and check out episode 10. See you guys.